Standing on a rutted road in the countryside, I asked a stooped, toothless beggar what her thoughts were on a United Nations tribunal to try the surviving leaders of the murderous Khmer Rouge regime. Tears began to stream down her face. "They killed my children," she said, "and that is why I am like this." What did Abraham Maslow have to teach someone who had been through something like that? I wondered. How was self-actualization even relevant, not just for her, but for everyone else, in a place where such injustices could occur? There was nothing about what I had studied in college, it seemed then, that applied in a country like this. But eventually I would come to think about these questions in a new way. I had arrived just as Cambodia seemed to be emerging from 30 years of civil war. The people I met were still grappling with the legacy of the brutal 4-year period in the 1970s when 1 in 4 individuals died of starvation, murder, and disease. A cataclysm that had ripped apart the entire society and left all who survived traumatized and broken. The stories I heard were so tragic, they often brought me to tears. Yet the traditional Khmer New Year, that first spring in 1999, was a huge, festive outpouring. Just the year before, people had been afraid to venture out in the wake of the 1997 coup d'etat. Now they thronged the streets and alleyways outside my apartment in downtown Phnom Penh, dancing and eating and celebrating. I had seen the pictures of hollow-eyed refugees. Now I watched children roam free. The local mayor had transformed a washed-out patch of dirt next to the Mekong River from a muddy morass into a park with lush grass and flowers, a place where families could picnic. The survivors around me were not grim, they were joyous. You could see it in their faces, euphoria and relief, renewal and resilience. And I found its appearance in what I had mistakenly taken to be a hopeless desert of sadness and loss, far more powerful than anything I could have imagined. How was this joy possible? Even the most unimaginable calamity, it seemed, had not crushed the humanity of the people around me and the ability to embrace the moment and each other. In fact, it seemed to make it burn even more brightly. Where did this remarkable resilience, this joy, come from? And why did it speak so powerfully to me? Sometimes the most inspiring stories, the ones that show us what we're really capable of, the ones that show us what is really important, emerge from the worst tragedies we can imagine. It wasn't just human potential that had so fascinated me on the hillside in California, I realized, but the resilience of the human spirit, that inherent urge, instinct, momentum to find, when we lose a part of ourselves, a way to be whole again, not just to survive, but to thrive. I've always been fascinated by what it is that makes people who have experienced setbacks able to move on and look ahead. You may ask what any of this has to do with those long words I alluded to in the beginning of this introduction. How could neuroscience, biomechanics, and genetic engineering possibly relate to Pol Pot or to humanistic psychology? I have chosen to write a science book, not a story about psychological trauma, Cambodian history, or Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because today, some of the most extreme and exciting examples of the triumph of human potential and resilience are being unleashed by medicine and science. This is something I experienced quite by accident. After returning home from my Cambodian adventures, working at Newsweek, covering 9/11, traveling to Iraq, I met a bionic engineer named Hugh Herr, with a story that so intrigued and inspired me, it made me look at science and technology in a new way. I followed the thread of the story he was part of, one involving neuroscience, biology, and amazing advances that are transforming what is possible. And as I got to know more people whose lives had been profoundly affected by the quiet revolution occurring in labs and clinics around the nation, their stories began to work the same kind of ineffable magic I first encountered.